I feel that sometimes the lens is turned so far externally. If you don't change the way you talk to me, I'm not going to be happy. I think psychedelics help us operate from more of a position of power. I can receive how you've called me differently because I know who I am. The example I talk about is it's like if I'm not feeling well and I go to the doctor and I get a prescription for you to change, it's not going to make me feel any better. I need to change how I perceive, how I receive.
Hi, Matt. How you doing today?
Mark, I'm doing well. It's good to hear your voice and see you again.
I always appreciate getting to speak with you. It's been a while since we've had a recording, at least. Matt and I, if anyone who doesn't know, talk frequently. Matt is a co-founder of Take 2 Minutes and has helped immensely with Take 2 Minutes, but has also gone on to do other great things with mental well-being and helping people. And I truly appreciate getting to speak with Matt frequently.
I appreciate you having me on. I always like our conversations. I'm always learning from you and happy to be on in this context because I love, as you know, Take 2 Minutes and where it's gone and all the things that it provides. And it's exciting times right now for Take 2 Minutes.
It is. We're always trying to do more and ideally help more people. I think you can probably attest to this, but the drive I get with Take 2 Minutes is when people reach out that it's helping them and they're getting into a better spot or it's helped them mentally, whatever it may be, that knowledge that I'm helping people is the drive to keep going.
Yeah, I don't know if your listeners really understand that. Like that's what your relationship with your son and trying to have help him find the positivity in the world is really what drove the initial start of this. And that you have at this point thousands and thousands of personal hours invested into making this the best possible tool it can be. And that, yes, there are bigger, more glamorous mindfulness based activities out there, but none of them work via text and none of them do exactly what Take 2 Minutes does. It's really a beautiful thing you've created, Mark.
Thank you very much. And on to that, my son is actually helping with the marketing and editing of videos now too. So he's actually a part of Take 2 Minutes, which is kind of a nice little full circle.
That's amazing. And all that in what, 5 years?
5 years. Yes.
Yeah,
it's been 5 years of work for it.
So a lot of work.
It is. Since we last spoke, you've done a lot with regards to psychedelics. Last time we were talking about legalization of them. And I think I was just watching one of the last video just to refresh my memory. And you had said that at that point in time, this was, I forgot, we last recorded like 18 months ago. And you had said that you wasn't too familiar with any legalization for purposes of recreation. Has that changed? I thought I saw some states talking about.
A number of things have changed, I think, since you and I spoke. I mean, I think we actually maybe even spoke, both Oregon and Colorado as a state have decriminalized psychedelics and many psychedelics and many drugs, not the same as legalization, but close enough for the purpose of this conversation.
Right.
And then both of those states have created frameworks for the medical use of psychedelics. Just recently, like a few weeks ago, the state of Utah is allowing the use of psilocybin and MDMA in 2 of their larger hospital systems. And then we're seeing multiple cities that have either mostly decriminalized psychedelics, which is exciting. Everything from Washington, D.C. to Ann Arbor and to Detroit, Michigan to San Jose, California, and a bunch in between.
And to take a step back, we kind of jumped right into it. For anyone who doesn't know, Matt has a lot of knowledge in psychedelics for mental well-being. He's written, is it 2 books now?
I do have 2, and I'm working on a 3rd right now. It's really exciting.
Right. And those books can be found on Amazon, but there's a lot of knowledge about it. And Matt has his own website, which is mattzemon.com. You can go there to get in touch with him. And he's got a lot of knowledge on psychedelics and how to use psychedelics to help you with your mental well-being on his site. And this is where Matt is always good to speak with him because he has more knowledge than anyone else I know. Matter of fact, I was just on one of these podcasts with someone else I speak with, Jamie Morgan. And Jamie was interested in talking about psychedelics. And I said, well, one of our next episodes, we should have all 3 of us, Matt, talk also, because I think Jamie is a counselor, but has interest in psychedelics and how it can help people. And I thought we should probably all 3 talk. So maybe in a future episode, the 3 of us can get on a discussion and talk about it.
Would love that. That sounds like a fun conversation to have.
So back to the legalization talks, I thought even Illinois was talking about to some degree legalizing it. Maybe it was just for
I
medicinal
think Illinois and
purposes.
Missouri, I'm not current, but they were both looking at doing certainly funding government funded testing. And I'm not sure what the latest is. And I can check that for our next call. I'll have some information on Illinois. But it
Right
is,
now, it's
yeah, tell me.
right now it's Oregon and Colorado you were talking about, correct?
Oregon, Colorado at a statewide level, and then a few cities. And I'd have to check to see if I can I'm looking to see if I can find it quickly. I cannot quickly enough. So
That's all right.
um yeah, but it's an exciting time for this as a tool for mindfulness. Why don't we, I mean, that's just a good thing to, I think what Take 2 Minutes does in terms of a practice of mindfulness is super important for people to to have the assistance, whether it's meditating, whether it's training your mind for the positive or our minds for the positive, using some of the activities like the three good things activities that are available, having text-based reminders. It's just so it's so easy to do this. And yeah, the gratitude journal, all those things are so important as a practice. What I spend a lot of time focused on are these ceremonial retreats where people have these kind of awarenesses and awakenings where they go from, well, why would I want to do that, to of course I want to do that. And I see that both in the medical community and in the spiritual community when it involves psychedelics. And I think Take 2 Minutes is a natural tool to go with it, because most of the time we're not using a psychedelic, we're just living our life. And
Right.
how can we slow down enough to watch those thoughts in our head, to remember that we are not our thoughts, and to operate from that place of calm and certainty and of internal validation that I think Take 2 Minutes helps people find.
To that, you mentioned three good things. I've had two focus groups with Take 2 Minutes now, where I had a complete strangers, but two dedicated groups. They were going to go through routines and Take 2 Minutes. And both times I had them do 15 days of gratitude journaling and then 15 days of a three good things activity.
Mm-hmm.
Both those groups, and I have the numbers somewhere. I'm not right in front of me, but I think both groups, so two different groups of, one group was 10 people, one group was 20 individuals. The first group of 10 people showed a 191% increase in positivity over 30 days. And the second group of 20 people showed a 141% increase in positivity over 30 days using Take 2 Minutes. And that's all they were doing, is using Take 2 Minutes, which was
That's
fascinating to me.
It is fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating when we think about as a culture. So much of what we're taught is based on scarcity. It's based on the negative. It's based on these false premises that there's not enough for everyone. I've got to guard what's mine. I've got to take what's mine. Um, and then on top of that, in our culture, we're spending so much time isolated, and it's leading to this loneliness epidemic that our Surgeon General talks about. It's leading to rises in depression, anxiety, suicide, all sorts of different things. And when we stop and just do something as simple as a three good things exercise, we take just a minute to say, what did I notice today that is good? And
Right.
just write that down. It sounds so simple, but just doing that act of noticing and documenting, noticing and documenting. Paper after paper, school after school who's studying positive psychology show that doing that increases our happiness, decreases our stress, it does all sorts of great things for us. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of the three good things.
You mentioned isolation. I find that interesting. My job has pretty much been remote work since we worked together in like 2010, 2009, that was maybe 2008, 2007. I mean, it's been a long time I've worked in this office.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that as I'm more aware of mental well-being and trying to get into a positive state, I do what I can to get out and meet people face to face. And there's a funny little example today. For a reason, I had to go meet an attorney, and they were happy to do a phone call. And I said, "No, do you mind if I come into your office?" And they're like, we can do it via phone. But to me, getting out of the house for just a mere half hour, seeing someone in person and having that conversation helped. And not that I was struggling in any way, but still, that's a good thing to get out and even video calls. I find that I really go towards a video call like this than a telephone call. And it's for those reasons, because I do have isolation in my normal day-to-day job. So I try to find ways to have these interactions. And if this is our face-to-face instead of being in person, that's fine. At least I get to see someone's face and know that there's reactions, emotions during the discussion.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I really don't like regular phone calls anymore. I just don't enjoy it. And I don't mind at all having this type of conversation where we're looking at each other in the eyes, we're seeing the facial reactions, we're having a very normal conversation, and it feels present enough. It's funny, Mark. You for as long as I've known you, you've been good um, about your interactions with other people. And the fun example I think about is just your consistent interactions with like the coffee people or the people at the down the street. You're always saying, "Hello, how are you?" You're stopping for a minute to ask kind of anyone you're interacting with, "How are you?" And you're giving a pause to actually listen to the response and to have a little interaction before you move on. And I know for me, that gives me energy when I do that. And it sounds like I think that gives you energy as
It
well.
does. It truly does. I know I've heard you say the same thing. Just in a conversation earlier today, you mentioned stopping and talking to a lady about dog food. But still, it's just that the fact you stop and have that conversation and listen to them, I think it makes a difference not only for the recipient, but for yourself. I think I feel better doing it. And I think the people who I'm engaging with feel better about it also. Because I'm not rushing through their lives. I'm trying to give them the time as well.
Yeah. For me, it comes back to this practice of if we fundamentally believe, or if I fundamentally believe, I don't know what you believe, if I fundamentally believe that we are all part of the same ocean, we may look like different waves, but we're all part of the same ocean having these different experiences. I then believe that anything I experience is something that somehow, somewhere, consciously, unconsciously, I've created. Well, what is it here to teach me? And if I can help, if I'm having an interaction, I'm helping lift up that person, that's lifting me up.
Right.
And conversely, if I'm operating in a state of awareness where I'm actually bringing that person down, I'm bringing myself down. And so, yeah, everybody I interact with is a chance to raise my energy, raise my vibration.
I love the analogy. We're all in the same ocean, different waves. That's great.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so I borrowed that from someone. I can't remember who, so I can't take credit. I should footnote it, but I love the visual there.
So again, since there's a lot of things you've done since we've last chatted, and I want to touch on a couple more of them before we run out of time. And one is you have, I'm going to misstate this, you've got a degree in psychology, correct?
Psychology and neuroscience of mental health.
And so you have a degree in that now. So how has that degree and the process of your studying and going through the schoolwork and everything, what has that taught you, or what are your takeaways? What can you share about what you've learned during all that?
Yeah, so after that first big psychedelic experience for me, which was a little bit over 5 years ago, um, I just couldn't believe how beautiful it was. I couldn't believe how safe I felt. And I realized that I don't know anything about this world. I was a non-drug user. Yeah, I was like, what just happened? What is this? And my instinct as kind of a geek is to start academically. So I did go back to school to get that master's in psychology, neuroscience, and mental health, focused on psychedelic medicine. So that's what my dissertation's on. That's what I try to help. I try to craft each class to be about that. I wanted to be able to read a scientific paper. I hadn't taken a science class in like 30 years. So it was like, I've got a lot to learn here. But then at the same time, I did go back I started traveling around the country and in other countries and experiencing different psychedelics from different people, from MDs and PhDs and taitas and shaman. And now I feel that I have a reasonable starting point for discussion about how can ceremonial psychedelics incorporate medical best practices, and how can the medicine community incorporate ceremonial best practices. And I kind of dance between those two groups. It's funny, Mark. In the old days, there was just healers, and the healers were both medical healers and spiritual healers. But we in a Western society, we've separated those roles. So we have pure science as the doctors, and when you're about to die, you go to the clergy. Well, psychedelics deal with both. And I get that if we were to give psychedelics just to the spiritual leaders, it would be fair to say, well, they don't have the latest and greatest knowledge about these medicines to keep me safe. Fair. If we were just to give them to the medical community, they don't have the spiritual training to help me where I'm going there. So we need a reconciliation. It's happening, but a new way of thinking about how to use these non-pharmaceutically based medicines in our practice? And then how do we incorporate things like take 2 minutes after the medicine? You've had the awareness. You see, we have a new way of looking at the world. How do we now keep the practice going? How do we keep the remembrance of I am not my thoughts? I am the receiver of my thoughts. I am powerful. I am beautiful. I am worthy. I am enough. And how do we keep that going every other day when we're not on the medicine?
Right. Good. And to that, no, it's good because it's a good segue, I think, just naturally that what you're talking about is a good segue into something else you've done since we last spoke. And I want you to talk about this too, because I have questions about this. But you have started another non-for-profit. I'm going to start there because if anyone doesn't know, Take 2 Minutes is a nonprofit, and Matt helps with that. But Matt has started another nonprofit. And why don't you talk about your new nonprofit?
Yeah, so I mean, we have gone and created a nonprofit that's a nonprofit religious institution that's focused around the use of entheogens. So the word entheogen is the fancy word for psychedelic in a spiritual setting. And the goal is not to make any money. The goal is to create a safe container where people can come and do their work with a spiritual purpose. No medical claims, spiritually based psychedelic work. And I love it. I love being a part of it. I put in my thousands of hours as well with for no financial return because it's my practice. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm doing, period. And then can I invite other people who want to come? Sure. Come on and be a part of this. And I've put it together in a way that's meaningful to me. So I'm not saying this is the only way to do this or this is the right way to do it. It's the way I do it. And we do these kind of multi-day, multi-sacrament services. So we just did one in Mexico. And the first day we used a medicine called sassafras or MDA. That's a heart opener. So you take this medicine and in ceremony, you feel love for yourself and love for others. It turns off shame, blame, and guilt. And it's this beautiful way to just feel love. The second day we use psilocybin where you then dive into the interconnectedness of all things. And you remember, oh, wait a minute, I'm not separate and apart from nature. I am nature. And again, at my core, at your core, we are all the same. We are loving, beautiful, worthy people. Now, on top of that, I put stories and I put all sorts of behaviors that might not be in alignment, but we're not at our core. We're the same. It's what we do that's different sometimes. And then we use a third medicine called Bufo, which is a non-duality medicine. It's actually the real name is 5-MeO-DMT. And in that medicine, there's no subject and object. There's just the universe and energy. And I know it sounds so woo-woo, even saying it, I realize that sounds woo-woo. And I don't know how else to talk about it. I think when I take that medicine, it's like I dissolved into math and I've just become part of this vibration of the world. And that's a super short, maybe 10 to 20 minute experience. But we talk about it in the ceremonial spaces. This is your personal conversation with your sacred. So I love creating these things. We typically have 3 to 6 musicians who do a custom soundscape. We typically have facilitators who have done this with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. We have chefs that keep people nourished. It's these beautiful experiences, and it works for me, and therefore it works for us. And I hope that people continue to find it. And there's no marketing; it's all word of mouth, and people continue to show up, and it's beautiful.
It's great. So a lot of questions from that for just my knowledge and to share knowledge with people who are listening. So one is, how many of these do you do a year? How frequently are they done?
About 8. We do about 8. Yeah. And we have anywhere between 12 and 20 people attending each ceremony. So it's not huge. And we have a staff of anywhere between 5 and 12 at any ceremony, depending on the size.
And so the last one you mentioned was in Mexico. Are there any in the States ever? Are they all out of country?
We move them around based on where people can be, and we try to be careful to talk about where, because it is challenging. We feel we're very defensible under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. We have 4 lawyers on retainer to try to make sure we've thought about all the things that matter to our government. We try to operate thinking about how do we reduce risk? How do we operate only in the sincere religious belief category? How do we Make sure that people have informed consent. How do we make sure that we are so the rules of engagement are clear? We're not making medical claims. And even with all that, today in America, there's not a clear path to get what's called an exemption from the DEA for the drug laws. So
Right.
that's okay. This practice and these practices of these psychedelic churches have never stopped. They didn't stop in the last 50 years of prohibition. They didn't stop in the 400 years of colonization of this country. They didn't stop in the 2,000 years since Christ. They just keep continuing. My hope, again, for me, is I want to live in a country where I can practice above ground. I want to live in a country where I can share the knowledge I'm learning and learn from others at constantly. So I'm doing everything I can to build a program with the hope that one day I can have a sit across the table from our government and have a candid discussion. What's important to you? What's important to me? How can we make this work for a country founded in religious freedom? I don't think that's too much to ask. And Mark, I haven't told you this, but I'm actually going back to school to go get a doctorate in ministry because I feel so strongly about this. So I've got the science background. I want to be able to, and it's one of the oldest institutions in the country, but I want to be able to bring both sides to a government discussion so that, again, starting with me, I can practice legally in our country and then expanding out from there.
That's great. And beliefs are an interesting thing. Everyone has
Mm-hmm.
different beliefs, and that obviously psychedelics isn't for everyone. The thing is there's nothing for everybody. I mean, take 2 minutes isn't for everybody, right? There's always going to be someone who doesn't agree with things, and that's beautiful. That's the right we all have. And I even say it for take 2 minutes because a lot of times someone will say, take 2 minutes doesn't work for me, or I don't like what it's doing for XYZ. And that's okay. It's not, there's nothing that's going to work for everybody, no matter how hard you try. And the goal is that there's enough options out there that there is something for everybody to help them in some way with different options, is what it comes down to.
That's interesting, Mark. So I'm gonna take that from a slightly different angle. Let me try it this way. I have an 18 and a 20-year-old, and my kids swim in this soup right now that is a lot about changing the way the external world talks to them. So there's a lot of conversation of, I want you to use these pronouns. I want you to call me this name. Um, I want you to respect these choices. And all of that is beautiful. And it's an and. And I feel that sometimes the lens is turned so far externally. If you don't change the way you talk to me, I'm not going to be happy. I think psychedelics help us operate from more of a position of power. I don't, I can receive how you've called me differently because I know who I am. Um, the example I talk about is it's like if I'm not feeling well and I go to the doctor and I get a prescription for you to change, it's not going to make me feel any better. I need
Right.
to change how I perceive, how I receive.
Correct.
Um, so I just totally lost the train of thought of where I was going with that. Weird,
Come on, beliefs and how there's
and
no,
beliefs.
yeah,
So as I think about again my practice, I don't need anyone to agree or to do what I do. I'm okay just doing my practice by myself. I'm also okay opening it up for others. I think, at least from what I've seen of you, Mark, you didn't sell out for Take 2 Minutes. You've said you knew the more affordable way to run Take 2 Minutes was to do an app, was not to do text. I don't know if your listeners know, you spend money out of your pocket every time a member gets a text. It actually costs money. That's why these big name solutions don't do text.
right,
But you said, if I look at the research and I truly want to help my son, and then I want to help my son's friends, and then by extension, anyone else who uses this, I want it to work. And kids and adults don't respond to text. I'm sorry, to the web-based
app
apps.
notifications.
They
Yeah,
don't do it. So they might sign up, but then they stop using it shortly. With
right,
text, they're going to read it, and they have a significantly a multiple of it's like a huge percentage will actually respond and do the work. So if the goal is to be effective, you said this is how I have to do it, and I don't care what it costs.
right,
That's your practice based on your knowledge and and anyone can do it or not do it. It doesn't matter. Are you
right.
as pretty as some of the other things? No, but it doesn't matter. More people who actually sign up stick with your program. And that's what you wanted when you started this.
That's correct. Yeah. 92% read rate within 3 minutes for text messages. So you know you're reaching the audience who needs help was my goal. And if someone doesn't like text messages, again, they may not be the right system for them. But the goal is if someone is there to get help, I know I can reach them with text messages and hopefully they're getting some assistance through the services.
Oh my goodness. And isn't this why you're getting therapists and coaches and groups like what the Department of Defense to use your tool? Because now all of a sudden a therapist can come on and they can create a group with all of their patients, and then their patients can get notifications that look incredibly personalized. It can actually be the two-way text communication. It does most of the heavy lifting. And then they can see whether the patient is doing the work. No different than I know you've done this for a bunch of different teachers and professors out there who are using this for their classes. They know if the students are doing it or not.
Right.
And that's incredible. And they certainly know they're reading the messages.
Right. Well, thank you for that. So quickly, one more question I had about your ceremonies, and this is just knowledge for everyone to know. I understand, and I might be mistaken, that's why I'm asking the question, that there are, I don't know what the proper terminology is, like caretakers who are there to help during the time. So it's a controlled and safe environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, we control the three things: source, set, and setting. Source is where did the medicine come from? So in our case, we know that it's pure, it's been tested. Set is your mindset going in. So in advance, we're doing intention setting, phone calls, and exercises. We're signing an informed consent. We're going over the risks that are possible. But all of that we're talking about the rules. We're talking about what's going to happen, how long of an experience, what are you taking, all of those things. And then the setting is that controlled environment, the physical space. So in our case, we have facilitators. Those are actually the medicine keepers. We have musicians who are creating that soundscape based on the energy. And we have sitters or guardians who are there. I need help going to the bathroom. I need you to refill my water bottle. I need a blanket. All of that takes place during the ceremony. And then we follow the ceremony with 4 weeks of integration work where they have an exercise each week and they get on an integration call. And now we are launching Take 2 Minutes into our process where now following those, they're going to be able to then continue with 3 good things and a gratitude journal and the meditations. I'm so excited about this.
As am I. I'm glad to be working with you and your team on that because I think it's good for the individuals who are going through this to have those activities afterwards. And it's, I'm always encouraging feedback from you or anyone to make activities better too. So as they start using this, if you do get feedback, please share it.
Yeah, I mean, and you take all those comments every time somebody writes you take it very seriously. And again, every line of code and you're able to make, unlike these big corporate entities, you can make change happen on a dime so quickly. So if someone has great ideas, right. I don't even know how do they get in touch with you, Mark?
Mark at take2minutes.org or on the website, there's a contact form and I'm the one who gets all the contacts.
Mark with a C at take2minutes.org. And throw those ideas by him. I mean, I know the whole piece with the professors and the school teachers came out of feedback. The things with the therapist groups came out of feedback.
Right.
The ability to assign homework by group and monitor it came out of feedback. So many of your things.
Most of it has come from feedback as it's grown. I mean, even the gratitude challenge came from feedback from people saying that I want a gratitude journal, but I don't know where to start. So we created a gratitude challenge. So it's really been grown by feedback from the user base. And I love hearing feedback, definitely.
Yeah, I love that you do that. I love that. And you keep making the product better. So much appreciated.
Well, I appreciate your time today. I always like talking to you, and hopefully we can get into more of a regular cadence with this. I think we should probably do it every other week or every 3 weeks or something like that. So we can continue.
No
talking.
shortage of things to talk about.
Yes, there's no shortage, especially a half hour goes by fast, it seems like. So I want to get more of Matt's time. So again, Matt Zemon, mattzeman.com. Check out his website. And if you have any questions, he is, I think, generally available. You can reach him on his Calendly link on the site and ask questions about anything you'd like with Matt.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm active on LinkedIn, active on Instagram, and my books are everywhere books are sold. And the new one is a veteran's guide to psychedelics, which I'm doing in collaboration with a group called Heroic Hearts Project, another nonprofit that works with veterans and takes them down primarily to Central and South America and gives them ayahuasca experiences. But they've just started doing some of these in Oregon now that we have a a medical framework that they can move into the United States and do this work. So I'm super excited. That should be out this summer.
That's awesome. That's good news too. They give help where help is needed, as always. That's great.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for talking again today.
Mark, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found the discussion helpful and interesting. If there are any topics you would like to hear discussed, head over to take2minutes.org and use the Contact Us form to submit your suggestions. Also, if you appreciate our content, sign up for an account at take2minutes.org. Subscriptions help us to continue generating new content. Thanks again.